Hi, Sean here, one half of Sean and Kiara. We are the co-creators of Lucy in the Sky, a graphic novel for middle grade readers published by First Second. Our second graphic novel, Rhiannon, will be out in October of 2025. If you like the things we do, please consider supporting us by becoming a paying member of our Patreon site for $4 a month. And if you enjoy videos like this, hit the like and subscribe buttons, as it'll help us build this channel. Thank you, and enjoy the video.
Hello, and welcome back to Reading Tintin, a personal view. Sean here, one half of Sean and Kiara. And if I sound a little odd in this video, you have to bear with me. I have a sore throat, which is a common hazard in my profession as a grade school teacher. So anyway, we are up to Volume 18 of The Adventures of Tintin, The Calculus Affiar. And this is another turning point volume in the Tintin series, in my mind. In a way, it's kind of the transition between the middle period and the later period of the volumes. The middle period is kind of considered Herge's the high point of the series, so far as the storytelling and the artwork all sort of coming together in a very high quality way. And the Calculus Affiar right here is number 18, is sort of kind of epitomizes that period. It's sort of the peak of the middle period and the beginning of this later series of stories. Where the story and the artwork just mesh in such a nice way. It's notable for a few other things as well. So we have the introduction of a new character that will be recurring, a character that becomes very popular and pops up again in a number of the volumes to come. And that would be the insurance salesman Julian Wag. And we have the first appearance of a minor character who we don't really see much, but pops up again and again in the later volumes, Cuts the Butcher. And we have a new villain who will be making a repeat appearance later on. This is Colonel Sponge. And in a way, he takes the place of Colonel Jurgen, who was the villain that we first saw in King Ottokar's Scepter, and then popped up again in Explorers on the Moon, and met his death in that volume. This volume also features several great large panel scenes, which Herge, from this point on, we'll see a number of these in the volumes, and they're really some of my favorite panels. The color in this is beautiful. At this point, Herge was really handing off that sort of work to his studio, but the people that he had working on the color were doing such a fantastic job, as well as the planes, trains, and automobiles. We see this is sort of a treasure trove, this volume is, for those who are fans of vehicles in the way they're rendered. And again, he had collaborators at his studio at the time who were specializing in vehicles and getting them accurate and drawing them so well. And it's got some classic Captain Haddock humor sequences. Probably one of my favorites is in this one. And Tintin, as we'll see, is more or less now a resident at Marlinspike Hall. Marlinspike has become the home headquarters for our trio of heroes, Haddock, Calculus, and Tintin. And the last time we get a look of Tintin's flat is back in the land of Black Gold. And we never really see it again, so the assumption is that he's just moved into the chateau. And one last thing is that Thompson & Thompson So if there is one criticism that I would make of this volume, it's that Thompson and Thompson don't really play a prominent role here. They do make an appearance. They sort of their prerequisite appearance in native costume. They're one gag that goes back as far as, I don't know, Cigars of the Pharaoh, I guess. and they do that, but they're put out of the story pretty fast, as we'll see. So the Calculus Affiar was begun in 1954, and it was published in one volume. It was returned to the one volume format after a series of two-part adventures. It was published in a single volume in 1956, right in the middle of the Cold War, the height of the Cold War. And indeed, this is a Cold War story. It's reminiscent of a lot of Cold War thrillers and movies, and it has a very cinematic quality to it. I recognize that it's probably one of the best of the Tintin series, although it's not one of my personal favorites. I love to look at it. The artwork is just incredibly beautiful. It's beautiful to look at, although there are other volumes that are more dear to my heart for personal reasons, really. I didn't come to this one until I was grown. I was an adult when I bought this. This is Little Brown. It's not one of the volumes that I bought as a child, but that said, it is really a feast for the eyes and a great story too. So great cover illustration with the broken glass. That is a really effective way to frame the scene. One of the scenes in the story that we'll see is pretty much reproduced accurately here. That's another thing. The Tintin adventures, the cover scenes are not, I'm thinking of covers of classic Marvel and DC comics, where they sort of suggest, the scene on the cover suggests something in the story, but they really, they don't fit into the story. It's not like you could have picked that scene out of the story. It's a lot more fantastical and meant to really draw you in and make you buy the book, right? That's the point of the cover illustration. And while the cover illustrations of the Tintin volumes are just as effective, I think they're just as tantalizing, and they make you want to read the story. They really are. They're more or less panels that have been pulled out of the book, haven't really been altered. I mean, they would fit perfectly in the narrative of the story, except for the broken glass framing here, which is effective, I think, but I never really figured out what it had to do with the scene. But it is effective. And broken glass is really hard or shattered glass is a really hard thing to draw. The scene here we'll come back to, this whole Tintin sort of dodging or hiding from soldiers in pursuit of him, running down a slope like this with the vertical trees is something that we've seen a few times before in the Tintin series. Okay, title page. We get our little title page, circular illustration like always. And here we have Calculus walking down the road from Marlinspike Hall. We assume going to whatever town is nearby, the town of Marlinspike, I guess. With his umbrella, his ratty hat, and his overcoat, and his suitcase. And it's kind of reminiscent of the scenes the opening scenes that we often see of Tintin approaching Marlinspike Hall. And the story opens with introducing Cuts the Butcher. So we're introduced to this character, Cuts the Butcher, who is the local butcher in the town. And his phone number and Marlin Spike are similar except for one digit. So we get the joke here that people are constantly confusing the two phone numbers, and we see Nestor, the butler here, is probably sick and tired of people calling for Cuts the Butcher. And he tells off the person who's calling. Haddock and Tintin are off for a stroll in the countryside, and they hear a boom in the distance, and they see that there's a storm approaching. And as they run towards the hall through the gates, Nestor approaches them with an umbrella, and as the three of them run back through the storm, we see first that they're being watched by somebody in an overcoat, and then as we pull back, we see that the person that's watching them is himself being watched by another person in an overcoat. And the second watcher here with his blue overcoat and green hat, we'll see that this is a distinctive costume that we'll encounter on several of the characters later on. And he says, "By the whiskers of Curvy Tosh," someone else is watching them already. So we know something is on. And the whiskers of Curvy Tosh, and this character of Curvy Tosh is another character that we never really meet in person, but is again some personality that will recur in the stories. We'll learn who he is, and the distinctive little circumflex, the diacritical mark above the U in Curvy Tosh looks a little bit like a mustache. And up they run into the manor. And lightning is striking, and just after a lightning, after a thunder crash, Tintin and Haddock hear some shattering of glass, and they look and see that one of the windows is shattered. He's just instructed Nestor that it's dangerous to talk on a telephone during a storm. He's telling Nestor to not lose his cool when people call for Cuts the Butcher, that he should be more patient with people, and furthermore, you should never use the telephone during a storm. It's extremely dangerous. And of course, the phone rings. Haddock picks up the phone and becomes irate at somebody asking for Cuts the Butcher. Just as lightning comes again, strikes the power lines, and the next panel we see, this is a great panel, a great sort of cartoon panel. The phone receiver lying on the floor, the handset on the floor, and Captain Haddock's empty shoes smoking. A great end of page panel. So has he been vaporized? Well, no, of course not. He's just up in the chandelier. The lightning continues to strike, and other things continue to break, and it seems like, are they connected? But how are they connected? A vase shatters while they're not looking, and then another crash, and Haddock sees his beautiful Florentine mirror is shattered, and but this time they believe it's Snowy chasing the Siamese cat. And then the lights go out, the power goes out, and as the power goes out, somebody's thumping on their door. And as they open the door, the intruder runs right into Haddock, of course. And as the lights come back on, we see it's this man who introduces himself as Jolyon Wag, who was stranded out in the storm and decided to seek refuge in the hall. And we immediately see what kind of character he is. He's the kind of person who immediately invites himself in and makes himself home in your home, starts drinking your whiskey, and never stops talking, never allows you to get a word in yourself, and is really a complete and total bore. The type of character that we know is now going to plague Captain Haddock, which he does right off the bat, as he begins suggesting that maybe he needs one of his insurance policies, as he's noticing all the shattered antiques all around. And as they're talking, Haddock's glass shatters in his hand. So what is going on? And Julian Wag finds that immensely amusing until it happens to himself, which then freaks him out, and he decides it's time to go. But not before he says that he will come back with Captain Haddock's insurance policy. Haddock has told him again and again that he doesn't need an insurance policy, but of course Wag does not seem to hear him, and says, well, that's all settled. I'll send you a policy. No, better still, I'll bring it myself. That'll give us a chance to have another chin wag together. leaves him furious. So Herge was great at inventing these characters that would just put Captain Haddock out of his mind. We have the Thompsons, of course, and Calculus in his own way, although, of course, Haddock loves Calculus, but his constant hard of hearing is too much for him to deal with. And then later on, of course, we have Bianca Castafiore, who appears in this volume as well. So after he leaves, they hear a number of what sounds like gunshots, and then they look out and they see Calculus approaching the manor. He's come in from his workshop. He has a workshop on the property. And as he comes in, Tintin notices that there are bullet holes in his hat. And Calculus has totally not heard the gunshots, the bullets that have apparently just narrowly missed getting him in the head. So they go out to investigate, and they find, in fact, a body. We see the legs of somebody sticking out of the shrubbery. Tintin says, no, he's alive. His heart's beating faintly. So Haddock rushes in to go and telephone. But as he approaches, Nestor tells him that something terrible has happened. His beautiful Venetian chandelier smashed to smithereens. So he tries to call up the police station, and of course he manages to get Cuts the butcher instead. And as he's looking for the number, another call comes in, somebody asking for Cuts the butcher. So he manages to get the police, Marlinspike police station, who say that they'll send someone right away. Tintin rushes back in and says that the poor fellow wants a drink. They come back with some water to find that he's vanished. Some further searching around, Snowy seems to have found somebody in the shrubs, and they find that it's not who they're looking for, but it's Julian Wag, who on his way out was in the middle of the crossfire and had jumped into the bushes to escape. The police arrive, and between Haddock and Julian Wag trying to explain what's going on, it seems to be a confused and hopeless muddle with no body anymore for the police to investigate. Tintin finds that there's a hole in the hedge that the person probably managed to get out through there, and then might have been picked up by a car waiting for him on the road. So their body is gone. And he gets back, and the police officer says, yes, this case looks like a hopeless muddle to me. So now the next morning, and we see there's a great sequence of panels here of Haddock looking at himself in the mirror, examining himself and his teeth, brushing his teeth. And as he does so, his mirror begins to crack until it finally shatters. There's the look of horror in the mirror as it's cracking, the fragmented reflection of Captain Haddock. I mean, all of this is just so wonderfully drawn, right down to the fragments of glass hanging in the air before they fall. And as he tries to explain to Tintin, who's bringing him a glass of water, the glass shatters again, so they can't figure out what is all this glass shattering about. And even as they're having breakfast, they notice that Snowy is howling and the cat is hissing at something. They apparently hear or sense something that Haddock and Tintin cannot. And then another crashing sound brings them outside of the gate. The passing milk truck has stopped. All the milk bottles have shattered inside the truck. And then another last panel here. Look out. And it's Thompson and Thompson make their first appearance. And I love this car that they're in. It's a Citroen 2CV, which was sort of an economy car of the day, and it had one of these roofs that were canvas that could be rolled back. And of course they're braking with the whole thing going forward, and their heads coming in, bumping into the canvas top, which of course smashes down their hats. Another one of their gags, things, one of their mishaps. Always happens to them. They nearly run over Captain Haddock and Tintin, which gives Captain Haddock an excuse for some of his trademark curses. And as the four of them are discussing all this glass shattering, this mystery of the glass shattering, Calculus approaches, and he tells them that he's ready to leave. He's flying off to Geneva, where he's taking part in a congress on nuclear physics. He says he'll be gone for 2 or 3 days, and he's got to catch the train at Marlinspike's station. And off he goes, and here we have our title page panel there. And as we see him walking, we see that there's a car ready and wait for him. And in fact, whoever's in the car says, "Look out, here he comes, get the chloroform ready." But before they can abduct him, who should come by but Cuts the butcher in his van. It was a really nice van. And he picks him up and offers him a lift into town before his kidnappers are able to get him. And meanwhile, Captain Haddock is explaining all the glass shattering, and he's telling the Thompsons just one thing: please don't gossip about this business. I don't want a whole crowd of sightseers here. And the Thompsons assure him, "You can rely on us. Mum's the word. That's our motto. Yes, dumb's the word. That's our motto." And then, of course, the next panel, we see that the mystery at Marlinspike is making the headlines throughout the world. So, so much for that. And a great large panel here. This is one of these kind of Where's Waldo type panels, where I would just sit and look at this. I could look at this for a long time and just pick out everything that was going on there. The TV crew with their little cherry picker, or whatever you call this thing, looking up over the gate. It's just an amateur camera photographer person up on his ladder. Fish and chips stand is set up there. People even camping out. There's somebody just waking up from his tent. Picnics. Lots of great cars. All these wonderful automobiles. 1950s automobiles. A little scooter. And down here, well, there's Julian Wag, who is in the middle of everything, of course, and is telling whoever cares to listen to him what he knows about the whole situation. People posing for photographs, souvenir seller. We see the same two policemen from the earlier scene here. Somebody has set up a telescope. And down here in the corner, we see that Herge has done something that he would do quite often. He would insert himself into a scene, making a cameo, and this is meant to be him as a reporter writing down the testimony of one of the visitors here. And here we see Captain Haddock, understandably enraged at all the horde of rubbernecks, as he calls them, at his gate. They can hardly wait to see the rest of my windows smashed to bits, he says. And Tintin says, no doubt, but somehow I think they're going to be disappointed. What do you mean, says Captain Haddock. Well, Tintin points out that since Calculus has been gone, there has been no glass shattering, and so he thinks that Calculus might be behind it. So they go to investigate he's converted a little coach house or something on the property here into his laboratory, his workspace. And they go in, and another great panel, all this equipment, all this tech back here, this 1950s style tech. This is just great, with wires hanging everywhere. And we see some sort of parabolic contraption here. Tintin is sniffing. Somebody is has been smoking a cigarette recently. He says, but Calculus doesn't smoke. And then all of a sudden, the door to the adjoining room slams open right on Tintin, and out rushes an intruder who's been hiding. And we see that he is dressed in the sort of the blue-gray overcoat and green hat of the person that we saw before, lurking in the bushes. And interestingly enough, he has one of these domino masks on, which seems a little odd. I don't know. Although it is kind of like a burglar trope, but he's not really a burglar. And as Snowy grabs a hold of his overcoat and rips a piece of it off, out of the pocket comes his pack of cigarettes, which Tintin retrieves. And we see the cigarettes and the key that have come out. They then notice that all the broken glass that Calculus has been gathering up in his workspace. So it seems obvious now that it was Calculus who was responsible for all this glass shattering. Hands up, they hear. And of course it is Julian Wag to come in to be a nuisance again. He's brought with him his insurance policy. But Tintin and Captain Haddock have no time for him now, and while he's busy searching through all his papers, they push him aside. They're off to Geneva to try to find Calculus. So they realize that Calculus must be in danger, that somebody has been trying to get him, and so they set off to Geneva to try to get to him, or to save him before it's too late. And while we're on the subject, this volume is reminiscent of The Seven Crystal Balls and Prisoners of the Sun, which was also a search for Calculus being kidnapped, and that sort of gives the arc of at least the second part of that story, Prisoners of the Sun, Captain Haddock and Tintin searching for Calculus and trying to find him, free him from his kidnappers. And so this, again, is the thrust of this story. It's a search for Calculus. And At the airport, we see that they're being observed by another agent in the green hat and bluish overcoat. And as they come down in Geneva, Herge, so he went out and traveled to Switzerland around Lake Geneva and scouted out locations. He did extensive research for this part of the story to make it as accurate as he could. And in fact, you know, when I was in Geneva once years ago, we went by a lot of these places, and it's really amazing the detail of the Hotel Cornavin, the station, Cornavin Station. This is the station here, and then the hotel that they go to, are all accurately drawn. The Contrin Airport in Geneva. Here again in the station, we see that they're being watched by two more of the blue overcoat people. And we see that they're plotting to delay them by getting them into a fake fight, trying to get them angry, to delay them. But before they can do so, they see that Haddock and Tintin are approaching a gendarme to ask their way to the Hotel Cornavin. And as they get there, they inquire after Calculus, and the desk clerk says, "Calculus, yes, his key's not on the board, so he must be in his room." So the clerk calls up, but nobody's answering. And Haddock and Tintin say, "Well, he's hard of hearing. He's probably up there. He just doesn't answer the phone, so let's go up." They take a lift up. There's a really nice scene here. This is like something from a movie where as the one lift is going up, the other is coming down. And of course, who is it that's coming down as Tintin and Haddock are going up? It is Calculus himself. And as he leaves, he places his key on the clerk's counter there. As the clerk has his back turned, we see the little agent here observing all of this. Haddock and Tintin realize that he's not in his room. They come back and they find, well, there's the key is there. He must have left while the clerk's back was turned. And then the clerk remembers that Calculus had asked for the time of the trains to Nyon, and said he'd take the 4:40 train. Tintin says we have exactly 7 minutes to get there, but before they can leave, one of the green hat agents sticks out his foot, tripping Haddock, getting him into an argument, trying to delay him. But Tintin pulls him away. He says, "Please, Captain, please. We shall miss Calculus." And then he gets into a mess, of course, as he goes through the revolving door. It's a great panel, a great cartoon gag panel here. It's like straight out of a Sunday cartoon strip, complete with the suitcase bursting open, everything flying out of it, including his braces, his suspenders. You've always got to have suspenders flying out. And as they finally get to the station, they find that they've just missed the train to Nyon. So rushing back to the hotel, they ask the clerk again if Calculus has made any calls. And the clerk finds that Calculus did make a call twice to a number in Nyon. So they get the number and they trace it to an address in Neon, and they then hire a cab to take them there. Another great street scene here with a tram in the background and the raindrops. Rain is also a hard thing to do. I mean, here, of course, he's just putting some little dashes, some little lines, but to make it effective, you've got the reflection of the wet on the ground. He just does a good job. The color as well. And as they're in the cab, they're run off the road by somebody in a black car, very similar to the one that they encounter outside of Marlinspike. And the cab is run into a pond, or is it Lake Geneva? I'm not sure. It might be. They might be alongside the lake here. In fact, it is the lake, because I believe that this is one of the things that Herge went to research. He wanted to try to find a place along the road from Geneva to Nyon where a car could be run off the road into Lake Geneva. And apparently there weren't too many, because there were, chateaus and whatever all alongside the road. But he did find one spot here where the road approached very close to the lake. And so he researched this out. And so a crowd of people gather around, pull out the driver from the lake. One of the passers-by says, "I saw it all. They swerved deliberately. If they'd wanted to push you into the lake, they couldn't have done it better." And then Tintin asks if one of them would drive them the rest of the way into Nyon. And they finally arrive there. When I was in Geneva, I did go to Nyon as well. And, not just there, but also in Geneva, you'll find places that are featured in the story often advertise the fact to this day. I believe there's a little Tintin cutout at Hotel Conavin. And in Nyon, I remember getting a brochure from someplace with photographs of all the places in town which are featured, which you can see here in the story. So they really capitalize on the fact that their town is featured in this volume.